One of the biggest mistakes I made as a young manager was avoiding feedback conversations. Not because I didn't care, and not because I didn't notice things, because I certainly did, but because I was worried about how people would react. I thought feedback would make people feel criticised, defensive, or even demotivated. What I've learnt over the years is that good feedback does exactly the opposite. It helps people grow. So in this video, I'm going to share the lessons I learnt and a simple approach to giving feedback that helps people improve without damaging the relationship. If you're new to the channel, my name is Jennings. I create videos to help aspiring and new managers become confident leaders. So consider subscribing if that sounds useful. Now, let's get into it. Why do managers avoid giving feedback? I think a lot of new managers struggle with giving feedback. I know I certainly did. I was relatively young when I first became a manager, and I worried about things like, what if they disagree with me? What if they get upset? What if they ask me something I don't know how to answer? Or worse still, what if they stopped liking me? So instead of having the conversation, I'd convince myself it wasn't important. Maybe it'd sort itself out. Maybe someone else would deal with it. Maybe I'd bring it up another day. The problem is that when managers avoid giving feedback, small issues often become bigger issues. And by the time the conversation finally happens, emotions are usually much higher than they needed to be. One way I like to think about feedback is to imagine a spacecraft travelling to the moon. The spacecraft is constantly receiving feedback about its position, its speed and its direction. And small adjustments are made throughout the journey. Why? Because if flight control waits until the spacecraft is nearly out of fuel, it's too late. There won't be enough fuel to correct the course and still reach the destination. Leadership is very similar. Feedback works best when it's timely. If we wait days or weeks to address something, we miss opportunities to help people improve. And sometimes we unintentionally send the message that the issue wasn't important enough to discuss at the time. The best feedback is usually given as close to the event as reasonably possible. Before jumping straight into giving feedback, it's often worth asking a few questions first. Tell me what happened. Talk me through your thinking. How do you think it went? What might you do differently next time? Sometimes people already know exactly what they could have done better. They just need to have the opportunity to reflect. And when people feel heard, they're far more likely to engage positively with the conversation. The goal isn't to catch people out, the goal is to help them think. One framework I find helpful is an acronym called STAR, and that stands for Situation, Task, Action and Result. So let's break that down. The situation, what was happening in the moment, the person you were interacting with, what was going on. The task, what was that individual trying to achieve, what outcome did they want. The action, what did that individual actually do? Was it a positive action? Was it deemed to be meeting standards? Or was it an action they regret or they would have liked to have done differently because they perceived it to be a negative action? And what was the result? What was the outcome? Was it a good outcome where everyone was happy, or was it an outcome that was less than desirable and we would like something different to happen in the future? By working through these four areas, you can have a much more balanced conversation about the performance. And it highlights something really important. Sometimes people do the right thing, but they get a poor result. And sometimes people do the wrong thing, but they get a good result. So as leaders, we need to separate the quality of the action from the quality of the outcome. For example, someone might follow the correct process, but still encounter circumstances outside of their control. For example, chef might prepare a dish following the recipe, but the customer might still complain about the dish because they didn't like how it tastes. Equally, someone might achieve a positive outcome, but they might have taken shortcuts that create risks for the future. So that chef might have missed out ingredients when preparing the dish, taken a few shortcuts, but actually the customer likes how the dish tastes. Doesn't mean to say that that's the right result. And that's why it's important to look beyond just the result. Protecting confidence while giving feedback is also important. If there's another lesson I've learnt over the years, it's this. If people only ever hear from us when something goes wrong, confidence can quickly disappear. Good feedback isn't just about identifying what needs to improve, it's also about recognising what's already working well. People need to know what to continue doing, not just what to stop doing. I try to make a conscious effort to acknowledge positive behaviours and successes whenever I see them. Not because I'm trying to soften any developmental feedback I might want to give, but because people deserve to know when they're doing a good job. And I also focus on behaviours rather than personality. For example, saying you interrupted the customer several times during that conversation is very different from saying you're rude. One describes an observable behaviour, the other feels like a judgment of the person. If we want people to improve without damaging confidence, we need to focus on what we observed rather than making assumptions about who they are. When people understand that the conversation is about helping them grow rather than criticising them as a person, they're far more likely to engage positively with the feedback. The biggest mindset shift for me was realising that feedback isn't about criticism. It's not about winning an argument. It's not about catching people out. Feedback is simply helping someone see something they might not see themselves. You see it in every profession. In sport, every athlete has a coach. Musicians receive feedback. The list is endless. Every professional develops because somebody helps them identify opportunities to improve. And leadership is no different. If you genuinely care about helping your team succeed, feedback is one of the most important tools you have to your disposal. But remember, they are human. Over the years, I've learnt people don't come to work and leave their personal lives at the door. Sometimes there are things happening outside of work that affect a performance. Now, that doesn't excuse things and it doesn't mean standards disappear, but it does mean we should approach people with curiosity rather than assumptions. The best managers I've worked with have always balanced accountability with empathy. Yes, they care about the results, but they also care about the people getting those results. Sometimes a conversation that starts with performance ends up uncovering something completely different. And when people feel supported, they often are far more motivated to improve. So if you're a new manager and you're nervous about giving feedback, you're not alone. I certainly was, and there are hundreds, if not thousands of people in exactly the same position. But remember this, Avoiding feedback doesn't protect people. Giving feedback well helps people grow. Give feedback promptly. Listen to the individual before you speak. Use a framework like STAR. Focus on behaviours rather than personalities. Recognise what people are doing well. And remember that you're dealing with human beings, not just employees. I'd love to hear from you. What's the hardest thing you've found about giving feedback as a manager? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video useful, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you again in the next video. Take care.